our business is very unique in that we're a regulated public utility. I'm not sure if that means anything or resonates with you guys, but I think it's a blessing and a curse, I will say, right? In some ways, it puts some restrictions on our business, but it gives us many opportunities. In what role I play in growing the business, it's really about bringing a different perspective. I mentioned being a regulated utility, and when I took over in January in 2020, I think the mindset was not as commercial as it necessarily needed to be. Right. I think there are many within the organization that still felt and operated our business like a monopoly, which we are. Right. But the reality is we're not a pure monopoly in some ways that other monopolies might be. Meaning, I don't have a monopoly over transportation. Right. Our monopoly service is over tug and barge operations over water within the Hawaiian Islands, but there's different ways to transport air cargo, direct shipment, right, container from the West Coast. And so our focus needs to become more commercial. And that really started our journey in starting to think about, well, how can we drive a more commercial mindset and develop a broader and deeper relationship with our customers?
And that's where Salesforce came into the picture for
That's
you. Yeah.
absolutely.
To really enhance the customer experience. I think that's what many organizations are looking for is not just the operational improvements like I mentioned about our time tracking and things like that, but is that customer experience and really looking to elevate how people engage with your organization. And I'm sorry to switch gears for 1 second. I failed to mention that Pacific Point. We also use a customer portal for our clients to log in and track all of their cases, because that was probably one of the last steps in our recent last steps in our implementation of Salesforce. But I think that that really makes a lot of sense in terms of wanting to impact the customer's experience. Megan, can you speak to how Salesforce has benefited your business unit? How it's used. What are those benefits that you're reaping at this point?
Sure. So I'm very excited to, just see the growth of how our customer portal originally started to where it is today. Just seeing it grow and flourish. Now we have launched our second phase of the customer portal. And with this, customers are able to view their account balance, view their freight bills, and also pay for them online. So we've kind of created this one-stop shop for them to be able to do all of their own online accounting. Instead of having to wait on the phone to call any one of us in our AR department or email us or also reach out to customer service, they can now basically go onto the customer portal themselves and they can look at their freight bills, they can look at their account balance and pay for everything right there. And also with the start of this second phase of our portal, we started this in February 1st of this year. And I noticed a drastic change in our total outstanding AR aging. We started off with a 4.1 million outstanding balance, and we have now reduced it to about 500,000. So that was a reduction of about 3.5 million within 8 months.
That's awesome. And I think that's a great story, first of all, impressive to get those collections in. But also, like I was mentioning, I think a lot of people think Salesforce is just sales, it's just for sales, but clearly it can impact all sorts of areas of your business and different user groups like Megan's group. So Megan, it's Honolulu Tech Week, and some of us are very much in the tech industry that are here, or we're interested in it, depending on everyone's role. From a business user's point of view, can you share with us how adopting Salesforce technology has been at Young Brothers for you and your team, and any considerations that you want to pass along to our audience?
So I think the one thing that I would say is that it has freed up a lot of time, not just for our AR group, but it has also freed up a lot of time for the customers. It reduces the wait time that the customer has to wait in order to get an answer from us, or a phone call, or having them pay for their invoices by phone. They basically can just go directly to the portal, and it cuts down their wait time. It also cuts down the time in our AR group. We can now focus in on the customers who really do have a hard time with their AR aging and do need, a little nudge to get their accounts paid up. But it has drastically, it moved our focus from, instead of having to continue to supply things to customers, whether it be invoices or processing payments, It moved more of our focus to looking at our current processes, looking at our current procedures, and seeing what we can fix within our group.
So we're going to switch gears. And by the way, I'd like to ask everyone to start thinking of your questions because we're nearing the end of the questions for Young Brothers. So those questions that you ask could be about Salesforce. They could be about giving back. Could be Young Brother. Anything that you want to ask, and we'll try to answer those questions. All right. So Jay, Young Brothers does a lot in the community. Can you speak to how Young Brothers helps small and large businesses thrive here in Hawaii?
Yeah. Again, I mentioned we're a regulated utility, so we're really blessed and very unique in the sense that just by virtue of what we do every single day, we're supporting the community as a whole, right? Whether you realize it or not, if you're a resident in the state of Hawaii or a visitor, you're a customer of YB, right? We are moving all product, any type of product, whether it's ag, vehicles, consumer packaged goods. We had some hand in that. And so we're really proud of the fact that we move really what matters most for the community as a whole. But we also give back in the more traditional ways. We obviously fund, charitable giving efforts throughout our statewide communities. To Deena's point, the more profitable we are, then the greater ability we have to give back. And so whether it's driving our DSO down, right, and collecting more, we have greater capacity to give back to our communities. Personally, I sit on a handful of different nonprofits. I like to say that my drive is really, whether it's in my day job or in my, charitable efforts, is to make Hawaii a better place. And so whether it's through my role at Aloha United Way, YMCA, I'm not on the board of the American Heart Association, but I am very active with that, or the Hawaii Food Bank, and also the Coast Guard Foundation. I'm always trying to find different ways to make Hawaii better. I have 3 young children. As I mentioned, I grew up here, and I don't think that there's a better place in the world to live. But I want to make sure that our keiki have an opportunity to do the same, and I would like to find it in a better place than when I found it. So, I think if we all have that same mindset in the different platforms that we operate in, then we have and will overcome all the challenges that we have here in the state.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Jay and Megan, for being here and telling us a little bit about Young Brothers' background and how you're leveraging Salesforce. I'll open it up for questions because we do have time. So we made really good on time. But I did want to mention before we open it up that when it comes to Salesforce and it comes to startups, I think that I think everyone's, I hope, somewhat familiar with Salesforce and what it can do. But it is an important part of building a business. And even though, at the early days of Pacific Point, we didn't use it for sales, we did use it for those basic account tracking. Those are fundamental things that every startup is going to have. You need to start figuring out who your leads are, who your prospects are, who your customers are. And it'll start to become more and more overwhelming as you grow, which is a great problem to have. And we've also worked, I'll give you some anecdotal information. We have worked with other startups, various tech startups like software as a service. We have several on the US mainland as well as in Asia Pacific. And, they might be using technology that they simply outgrow, and they can outgrow that quickly. And that migration effort is kind of a pain. I'm just going to say it. But it's an investment that they have to make to really take them to the next level, where they can start leveraging all the extras that come with a powerful platform like Salesforce. And that's portal technology, like Jay was talking about. That's all the integrations. Like if you have other back office systems, a lot of them are looking at integrating with, maybe a back office billing system or things like that. The power of what you can do with Salesforce is much more flexible than what you would find with some other CRMs. So with that, I'll open it up. Happy to answer questions, and we'll rotate the microphone around if anybody has anything they came here to learn and just didn't hear yet. I'll take yours just to rotate it. Okay. Here you go.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you opening it up not only to young entrepreneurs, but also students at the University of Hawaii. My name is Marina, but I have a question for Deena, and it's what is the most unexpected but crucial thing that you've learned when starting your own business?
Um, I think that I don't. How can I say this? It takes a lot of internal fortitude to build a business. It takes a lot of there's just wall after wall or negativity after negativity, whatever you want to call it, hurdle after hurdle. And I think that, people tell you, oh, yeah, being an entrepreneur, it's hard. You're going to have to deal with all this and that. I don't think that is enough to have warned me to the degree to which I would have to really toughen up. And it isn't for people that are faint of heart. I will say that because there's just mountain after mountain that you have to climb, and they change as the company evolves and they change as the company grows. So I think, even though it's to some extent you would think that would be expected, some of those early conversations I get blown away by. I'm like, wow, did someone literally just tell me the things that they just said? Like, wow, okay. But you gotta just block those things out and focus on the goal at hand, focus on the short-term tasks at hand, the bigger picture tasks at hand, and stay focused. But I don't think any amount of warning would have prepared me for that amount of fortitude that was necessary.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks for using the mic.
I'll try to frame it in a kind of a startup way. Besides the technology that Pacific Point helped you build, how did the discovery or them asking you questions help you get insight into your business? Because this is, I think, another great thing about working with consultants like this.
Okay, sorry. I'm technologically challenged. I think that what I heard or what I initially thought when you were asking that question is really insight into how you meet a customer's need. Pacific Point was really good at servicing us and meeting our needs, right? Throughout the project management process, they made it simple, they were clear, articulated deliverables. They listened to us quite a bit, right, to understand what our needs were, and then they went to work. But they also consistently communicated milestones, right, to delivery of the project. I think that process helped us better understand in a different way what our customers' needs are. Right? I mean, what we provide to them, the service that we provide, is obviously very different, right? We're moving cargo from point A to point B, but similarly, right? They want ease of that effort, they want transparency, and they want communication at different points. And frankly, that's not something that we had delivered for them. And obviously, there's an evolution, right? This is an iterative process. We're gonna continue to get better, but implementation and working specifically with Pacific Point gave us an opportunity to reevaluate our service offering and how we deliver that.
Um, is this one? Now I'm getting confused. Okay. Confuse me, Jay. Okay. I was going to add one small thing to add on to what Jay said, because I think he's totally right about the iterative process. I have a little thing an analogy that I like to use about any IT transformation, but particularly a CRM transformation. I work with a lot of clients that are like, man, we're so behind. And we're not talking about Jay, we're talking about just in general. And, we're so behind. We don't have our data. We don't have all this and that together. And they see where they could eventually go with their CRM solutions, but it feels so far. It feels so daunting. So the analogy I like to use is the fitness journey, right? It's like you kind of be like, oh, I really need to work out and become this great looking person and be super fit and muscular and all these things, or whatever your target goal is. But it doesn't happen in a day. It doesn't happen in a month, right? It takes one step at a time, and like you incorporate this part of the plan, then you get to that next level and you elevate it, and then you go to the next go to that next elevation. And all the clients that we have seen that have the best success on Salesforce start with something, then they add the next bit, and then they add the next thing. And that's really where Pacific Point was. I mean, I was doing time entry and basic sales account management, and I would have never dreamed that we would have our full consulting team tracking all of their user stories in Salesforce, and our clients having visibility on a real-time portal. I mean, I just wouldn't even have thought of that back then. But with all that data, and as we kept going, like, oh, like we can use this for this now. And so you continue to build and evolve and think of it as a fitness journey. It's not like a one and done that you're all done with Salesforce once you start on it or do your first project. Okay, next question.
Hi, my name is Daniel. I had a question kind of speaking to the challenges of when you're first starting and the fortitude you needed. When was sort of like your first hire or people that you consulted with as mentors to kind of help you keep going and kind of guide your vision and make sure you're staying focused on your goal at hand to get through probably a fair amount of negativity at first as you're trying to prove the value of what you're bringing to the market?
Okay, so I think kind of two angles to that. I think the first part was the first hires. So, our company's a little bit different than maybe certain other startups where we have a relatively low startup cost as a consulting company. And I could see that, I think most companies should try to start as low cost as possible. But, we bill out resources. That's our asset. That's our number one. Everybody's assets, their people. But in our case, it's legitimately like the asset. It is the revenue. And, you need a computer and you need some people and you build them out and you've got to sell them to project. There's some stuff there, but relatively low cost. So for us, because we're a consulting company at Pacific Point, we had to hire people to actually do a lot of those consulting engagements, those early ones. But I would say I balanced out that risk of having someone and then all of a sudden going like, ooh, I don't have another project for them to go do, and now I got to like pay for this person. As you balance that out with 1099 contractors. So we had those in the early days. I would say at this stage of our company, it's all full-time employees. I think I might have a few people that are almost like they're so regular, they're actually a part of our day-to-day. But in the early days, especially when you're trying to convince somebody to come to a consulting company and they're like, who are you and what do you do? Like, no. So it takes some convincing, right? So I think early days, though, we had to go that way because that was the only way to make revenue. So that was happening pretty early. And then as far as like the advisory and things like that, I think that I'm the kind of person that I learn more indirectly. I learn by seeing other leaders and going, okay, I like that and I don't like this, or looking at other examples and kind of formulating and shaping. But I wouldn't say that I leaned on anyone for the belief in what I wanted to do. And I feel like that, I don't know if that's common or not common, but I would say that you really have to believe in what you do and what you are, because I'll give you an example. We started the company and we had some small stuff going, and then as a consulting company, we have to bid on projects. So there's RFPs coming out, there's opportunities, we're bidding, we're competing, and I bid and I lost, and I bid and I lost, and I bid and I lost over and over again the first several years of the company. And I remember people going like, so when are you going to close it down? Like, you done yet? So, I don't know that even an outside voice is going to say, because they don't know you. And even if they were experienced as a consulting firm, they would probably be like, they'd have to be really in your head. They'd have to really understand to be able to be a valid advisor in a way. So I think, like I said, I'd kind of look at the situation and say, well, I lost for these reasons, and I'm going to, get what I need to do to adjust the next go round, And I will say, and this is a kind of an interesting story, we have a fairly large client, a very big, one of our biggest clients today. That happened through loss of a bid. I bid on the project, but I met them through failure. I met them through not winning. And they got to know me because I got shortlisted and I lost, but now I have a lot of projects through that particular organization. So, it's that that trying and believing and adjusting if you need to adjust, but I would say, like, I think it's pretty hard to completely have advisors unless they're really close to what you do, to where they would say, okay, it's time to hang it up, or it's time to totally adjust course. Because if you start going off of your own gut feelings and your own understanding, I just feel like you lose a part of the DNA of the company. That's my 2 cents.
Thanks.
So I totally sympathize. I just want to make a quick comment about that because I went through a loophole of different advisors that led me astray for so many years and like was a mess of things, but now was able to then figure it out. But thank you again for all of the commentary. I actually have a question for the Young Brother crew. As far as you were talking about the cost driving down the 3.5 million, and you were able to get that down to the 500K. How is that kind of like, are you guys working still towards kind of that full efficiency when it comes to even driving it all the way down to zero? How is that kind of like going?
Oh, that's a continuous growth right there. But yes, we are trying to bring it as much as we can, possibly down to at least zero. So it's going to be an ever-growing thing, but that is basically what we are driving towards.
And I guess like quick follow up on that. As far as how you went about that, is that how did you overcome those challenges? Is that something that you're still dealing with as challenges, trying to get to that efficiency?
Yes. So right now I have a team, right? So I have a accounts receivable team, and they're basically contacting all of our account customers that we have, trying to get them enrolled in customer portal, so that way they can go ahead and review their own account without having to reach out to us all the time. Giving them the power to go through it on their own and not having to keep reaching out to customer service or reaching out to AR. But yes, it's basically getting them all signed up and getting them access to their own customer portal.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll build off of that if that's okay. And it's interesting because Megan and I were talking about this as you guys were coming in. You know, prior to the Salesforce implementation, Megan and her team were often overwhelmed with just the volume of information that they had to process, right? Like constantly getting calls from customers, having to send and resend billing invoices. And so what we say in office is like they're just doing the busy dance, right? They had tons of work, but seemingly they weren't making any progress. And I don't mean that in a negative way, right? But they were overwhelmed with that. But with the Salesforce implementation, we were able to, one, empower the customers to be able to take some of that workload off of our own hands. It's not to say that we don't get some of those calls, but not nearly as many as before. But I think also a lot of the data processing through that transition has allowed them to look at our receivables in a way that targets their effort, right? So they're working more effectively at identifying how do I prioritize which customers I call, because which ones can I really move the needle on, and which ones are really, because as much as we aspire to have zero, some of that aging is in existence for whatever reason, and it's valid. And so you're barking up a tree that you're never going to be able to have impact on. And I think the Salesforce implementation has really focused their effort to allow them to have impact.
So, heard about the incredible impact Salesforce has had on young brothers. I'm curious, were there any adoption challenges, change management challenges, and how did your team and Pacific Point help you either mitigate those challenges or overcome them?
Yeah, we're talking about this as well. And it's funny because I kind of in the same spirit of what Deena was talking about, I said iterative, there's this evolution, but, as leaders, much of what we're doing is just managing change. And what's really important is to make sure that people buy in to understand what benefit that they get, right? So it's about helping tell a story. I would say that we're still on this journey, right? It's been interestingly probably easier for our customers to understand the value. Not all of them, right? Because some are resistant to change. No, I want to talk to someone. It's the whole banking industry transition from having branches to, transacting over ATMs or even online. And so we're going through that process. But I would say that, some of our own challenges just internally. Like, well, I'm doing my job differently today, or what you're asking me to do is different than how I've done it for the last 20 years. And so we have to manage and talk through to people to help them understand why. One, you're not going to lose your job. Two, you're actually going to have greater impact. And three, you're going to find value in that. I think Pacific Point has helped us because this is what they do for a living, right? Manage change constantly. And so every battle that we've come across, I think they've been there before. And so we've come back to them for advice and how to manage through that. But it's, I don't think there's not a switch, right? It's not going to just happen. And we can't take a magic wand and tell everyone to believe, right? Everyone's going to believe at their own pace.
Hi, my name is Michael. I really appreciate you sharing your story. Yeah, I guess in the same vein, the insurgence of AI, how is that kind of impacting the business, and are you kind of integrating that into Hawaii firms that are very kind of like, I would say, more technologically lower than the rest of the country?
Okay, hello. Salesforce has AI technology that we do talk to our customers about. I would agree that maybe the adoption of that is a little bit slower at the moment. However, I think the bigger conversations that are happening now are making sure you have the data. Like, everyone's seeing the articles or like, yay, it's going to do all this stuff and like start me off. And then I can, with that generative AI or various versions of that. And I think that what we're finding is that the client's like, well, it can't really summarize data that's not there. So how about we like really look at what data you have and help you think through how you're going to get that data and so we're having, I would say, more the data conversation than the detailed AI conversation, at least at this stage. But I think there's so many fantastic use cases for using AI in all sorts. When I just look at our own Specific Point's own Salesforce, there's incredible use cases for us to pull data. Because we have so much data in there about our past projects and who our customers are and, how long projects take us to do. Like we can summarize information in industry and, we can start to really gain some AI benefits. But if you get down to the customer level, I would say we're having more like data conversations at this stage. Yeah. So hopefully we'll get further along soon. Anybody else? Back in the back? Okay. I think we're okay on time. So yeah, I think we did really good. So thank you guys very much. I guess from a summary perspective, I'll just close things down. I want to thank you guys for coming out. I'm, back in the same vein of talking about the importance of adoption of technology in Hawaii and the founding of our company. This means so much to be involved in the inaugural Honolulu Tech Week. So I'm thankful to the organizers and Leilani for involving me in this, and for Young Brothers for being here and talking about technology adoption. And you can see, like, as a startup, how far you can come, right? From back in the 1900s and like to today's present, and continuing to adopt technology and leverage it for innovation in your organization. So I'm very, very thankful to all of you for coming and like I said, to be part of the inaugural Honolulu Tech Week. If you guys have any questions or need anything, please let me know. And with that, I will close things down.